Miss NEENA Rai is an author and an artist based out of New Delhi, India. Her latest book is called Amazing Ayodhya, and it is based on her research of the Valmiki Ramayana. The book offers authentic information about the city, which will not only help understand the life and times of ancient Hindus, but also the revered figures of Rama and Sita. She is also a columnist, artist, yoga enthusiast, and ex-model.
Thank you. I love being in Chennai, going through the streets. So thank you for having us, and thank you to the organizers. Thank you for having us and giving us this opportunity. Before I begin, I want to ask the audience, how many of you here celebrate Diwali? Okay. So we all know the story of Diwali, that Ramji and Sita ji come to Ayodhya. And when they come to Ayodhya, the whole of Ayodhya is lit with diyas, correct? Pataka, diya, yes? Okay. Okay. Now, if I will ask you, but is this story overall, does everybody know this story or not? Yes, yes? Narak Chaturthi, yeah. So if I ask anybody, when Ram and Sita came to Ayodhya and everybody lit up their homes, can somebody tell me what were the homes of those people like? Where were the diyas lit? And when Ram and Sita came to Ayodhya, what were the roads that they came on? And when they came on those roads, can you tell me how was Ramji's palace? Can you tell me how was Dashrath and Kaikeyiji's palace? Can you tell me what are the kinds of animals that were in Ayodhya? Can you tell me what are the kinds of animals that Sita ji and Ramji had in their palace? Were they only animals or were they birds also? And can somebody tell me who established Ayodhya? And if we talk of Ayodhya, we always come to Ram and Dashrath. Can somebody tell me how far and wide was Dashrath ji's empire? And was Ayodhya a district, a city, a town? What was it? Any answers? So you see this silence is the reason I wrote my book, Amazing Ayodhya. See, all the questions I just asked you, is the answers to this, every Hindu, or for that matter, every Indian should know. Because Ayodhya is one of the most prized district, city, whatever you want to call it, of our country. It has been of great importance. It's actually a tirth. And it has been of great importance since the time it came into inception. Until today, it is still one of the holiest cities of Hindus. Yet, if you ask our own people, can you describe Ayodhya to me? Can you tell me what was the layout of Ayodhya? Was it circular, rectangular, hexagonal? Can you tell me about how the army was? Can you tell me, was there a fort? What was there? So in my search for all these answers, in my search for my own culture, and in my search and my own need, I wrote this book wherein I gave people an insight on how people lived in ancient times. And it is something to be very proud of. So for example, I'll answer some of the questions that I just asked you. All the questions, by the way, I asked you, the answers to these questions are given in my book, Amazing Ayodhya. This is available on Amazon, and it's available on most, in most leading bookstores. So I asked you a question, can somebody tell me the shape of Ayodhya? So Ayodhya is made according to Vastu. Now, I don't know about Chennai, but in Delhi still, houses are made according to Vastu. And these houses are called Vastu compliant houses, and in the market they have a higher price than those that are not Vastu compliant. So all of Ayodhya was made according to Vastu. It had a rectangular shape. In the Valmiki Ramayana, it says 3 by 12 yojan. So that means it was 3 yojan in breadth and 12 yojan in length. That made it rectangular. And it had the Saryu river flowing around it and making a moat around it. They had a beautiful moat as well. Now Ayodhya is propagated as a spiritual city. But it is not a spiritual city. It is not a city wherein it is so spiritual that nobody can fight Ayodhya. The word Ayodhya means that which you cannot fight, but not with spirituality, but with military intelligence and military might. This is something that nobody tells you. And this is something that Valmiki says in the Ramayana, that true to its name. And why does he say true to its name? He describes the whole of Ayodhya as a military city with a stronghold. It has, animals. It has this very unique weapon called Shatagni. Has anybody heard of the Shatagni? Yeah. So the Shatagni is one of the most unique ancient weapons. It's like a missile. And the Shatagni was on the ramparts of the stronghold. Now the ramparts are that area wherein, that broad area wherein the army can walk and from there they can shoot. This is an area around the fort. Any fort that you will see, they have a rampart. So and then there is a moat outside of Ayodhya which the animals cannot cross. And then beyond the moat, he's built a jungle for 2 yojan. So these are some things that none of us knew about Ayodhya. And I thought that writing this book, I will be able to tell people what they should have already known. Most of us have read the Valmiki Ramayana. Most of us know about Ramcharitmanas and the Ramayans, and we all know the story, but we do not know the glory of Ayodhya. Another interesting thing I'm going to tell you. Inside Ayodhya, again, it was based on Vastu. It was very Vastu compliant. The streets of Ayodhya were Vastu compliant. The design of the streets was in such a manner that in the center was the garbha griha that you could not cross. And there were main streets, the Rajbithi, which went from north to south and then east to west, and then various streets that followed in a grid pattern. Can somebody tell me in today's date which cities follow grid pattern layouts? Anybody? Mm-hmm. They have a pattern, right? So today, the grid pattern is copied maximum in the West. So New York has a grid pattern layout. Then we have Abu Dhabi, which has a grid pattern layout. And then a Westerner who designed Chandigarh gave it a grid pattern layout. So the grid pattern layout, which the Hindus were practicing and putting it in use in ancient times, they have forgotten it today. And I'm saying that because I come from the north, and in the north there are not many cities that are designed in a very, very convenient and easy to follow grid pattern. So there are so many of these kind of gems that I have, I have researched and put it in my book. And all the questions that I asked, all the answers are also available in the book. So if anybody has any questions, I'm very happy to answer. If you're very curious about the architecture of Ramayana, if you're very curious, I'll be very happy to answer your questions. Please.
I have a question. You mentioned that Ayodhya was kind of a military city.
Yes.
Now, military cities usually are created when you find that there would be some attacks.
Yes.
So today we know who can attack us. But 10,000 years ago, who was attacking Ayodhya?
So I'll tell you who was attacking Ayodhya, the Asurs. No, see, one of the basic things in psychology is that the have-nots, those who feel they don't have it, or those who are, the jealous type of people, the tamasic people, the presence of somebody sattvic or rajasic, the presence of something powerful, just by their presence, will, shake the presence of the person who doesn't like you, or, who's jealous of you, or who has an issue with you. So they feel that they will attack you, and in doing so, they will become more powerful. So the attack on what existed and whatever is there, whatever is important, has been going on since eons. I mean, if we take, we can take any example throughout history, and we'll always find that which is good has always been attacked. In the time of Dashrath and in those past eras, there are talks of Devasur Yudh. There's Devasur Yudh, as well as there are yuddhs with other countries, other states or countries, not in the empire itself. So, for example, every 10 years, Raja Dashrath used to do an Ashwamedh Yajna. An Ashwamedh Yajna meant that you leave your white horse and it goes to whichever territory, and the one who stops the horse then has to fight. So that means that there were fights there. It is not that there weren't. Then again, I'll take your attention to the fact that how did Kaikeyi get the 2 boons? And based on those 2 boons, Ramji had to go to, Vanvas, go for Vanvas. So she had helped Dashrath in the Devasur Yudh, wherein she saved his life. So wars have been going on, and because wars were going on, because they wanted to construct a city that nobody could destroy, nobody could fight and take over, therefore they called it Ayodhya, जिससे युद्ध नहीं किया जा सकता है, that which you cannot fight. न युद्ध then becomes ayodhya or Ayodhya. Unconquerable, unassailable. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to read out the passage for you wherein Kaikeyi tells Dashrath about the war. So she says, and this is written, yeah. Okay. Okay. So there is another mention of the various wars that were fought. If you don't want me to read out the Devasur Yudhya, then I shall tell you about another shlok wherein...
Can I request something? if the discussion is long, can we do it once the session is over? Because we all are. Yes, sir. Ji.
No, automatically in Ashwamedh Yajnas, a king doesn't become. No, no. So Ashwamedh Yajna cannot be carried on by regular kings. Ashwamedh Yajna is carried on by Maharajas, Maharajas only. So a Maharaja by definition is a king who has around 1,000, let's say a Maharaja has 1,000 kings under him. In today's day and age, you can say a Maharaj has 1,000 zamindars under him. A minimum of 1,000 zamindars, or a minimum, they're called Samant Rajas, what we call zamindars today. So 1,000 Rajas then becomes, somebody to whom 1,000 Rajas give their kar to, or their tax to, then that becomes a Maharaj. And in those areas, and even further, the king would then leave his white horse, and it was specifically a very white horse. That white horse could traverse as much as it could, and if anybody stopped that white horse, there was always a small portion of the army that was traveling with that white horse. So first they would fight with that army, and then if that army lost, then the bigger armies were called. And we know this because when Love and Kush, in the story of Love and Kush stopped the Ashwamedh horse of Bhagwan Ram himself, correct? So that's how you do it. And so Maharaja Dashrath also used to perform Ashwamedh Yajna. Raja Ram used to perform Ashwamedh Yajna. In fact, you said that there were no, there were no people, there were no wars. But then can you tell me who are the people who took, before, in the forefathers, who was thrown out of Ayodhya from the forefathers of Dashrath? Okay. So in the Valmiki Ramayana, there are three countries mentioned, or three races of people that are mentioned, who threw out an ancestor of Dashrath from Ayodhya itself. The ancestor who was thrown out, his name is Asit, Maharaj Asit. So Maharaj Asit, when he was chased away from Ayodhya itself, had to go and live in the Himalayas with his two wives. Now, at the time, both the wives, I think, were pregnant, and the co-wife, the other wife, she poisons the Dharampatni, who's the first wife. The first wife is always the Dharampatni, whose children will be the heir to the throne. So because she poisons it, and then this lady goes to Maharshi Chyavan. So she says, I have been poisoned, and poison in Sanskrit is called gar. And so the Maharshi says, do not worry, you will have a great son, and that son will become a great king. And that son becomes a great king. And when he was born with poison alongst with it. Can anybody tell me the name? Yes, correct. Sahagar, who is born with poison. So his name is Sagar. And based on Sagar, the 60,000 sons of Sagar, when they were looking for their Ashwamedh horse, they dug up the ocean, because of which the ocean is called Sagar. So if we read the genealogy as well, we will know again and again that Ayodhya was attacked. In fact, it was attacked to such an extent that the king of Ayodhya had to go and reside in the Himalayas, and it was Sagar who won Ayodhya back again. So again and again, there were repeated attacks on Ayodhya, and they had to maintain that military might. Otherwise, if there were no attacks, what was the point of having an Ashkauhini? Sure. So so I suggest you read the Valmiki Ramayana, and in Valmiki Ramayana, read the portion wherein Bhagwan, Vashishtji, by the way, is saying these stories. And to whom is he saying the story? He's saying this story to the priest of Maharaja Janak at the time of talks of marriage. So whenever there is a marriage in a traditional Hindu family, we talk of the gotra, we talk of the history, we talk who's the father, who's the uncle. So when Maharaja Dashrath goes to Janakpur for the marriage of Ram and Sita, then Vashisht himself gives the whole introduction and genealogy. And in that introduction, it is Vashisht who says, these were the kings, and this was Maharaj Asit, and Maharaj Asit was thrown out. So there were wars, and then Sagar came, there were Ashwamedh Yajnas, there were attacks, there were battles, and sometimes the people of Ayodhya won, and sometimes the people of Ayodhya lost. It is, this should be in the portion where you talk of where they're talking of the Vivah. So when they have just arrived.
And I'm very happy NEENA ji has done such good work, and it is directly from Itihas as it happened. We have dearth of literature on our narrative, and that is why you don't have young researchers willing to work, because when they want to work, there is no material available. So NEENA ji.
Thank you. Okay, so for the question that you asked, if Raja Dashrath had enemies, and I have mentioned this in my book, and it is mentioned on page 45. So in the Valmiki Ramayana Balkand 1:6:27, Shlok 27, Valmiki ji says, Tam Purim sa Mahateja, Raja Dashratho Mahan, Shashas Shamitaha Amitro, Nakshatraniva Chandramaha. So what does this mean? Tam Purim means that city, and that city is which city? That city is Ayodhya. Mahateja Raja Dashratho. Mahatejwala king, you know, that king, glorious king, that great king. He ruled over his enemies like the moon rules over the nakshatras at night. So the literal translation is, the great, resplendent and admirable King Dashrath resided. He ruled the world from that city with silenced enemies. The word Shamitaha Amitra means silenced, appeased, allayed, destroyed and vanquished those who are not friends. So that means that Maharaja Dashrath was destroying enemies regularly and repeatedly, and because of this too, he had an Ashkohini Sena. Now this Ashkohini Sena, I don't know how many of you know, but I'm going to ask you a question. How many Ashkohini Senas fought in the Mahabharata? Anybody, any idea? Yes. Yes, correct. Wonderful. So there were 18 Ashkohini Senas who fought for 18 days, and all of them were destroyed. So Maharaja Dashrath is the ruler of one Ashkohini Sena. And this is mentioned there. And this is because they had enemies, they were attacked, and this is the reason why he designed Ayodhya in a manner that other people couldn't win. And so all the design, all of it, I've given it in my book, and my book is full of pictures, the whole layout of Ayodhya, the design, and everything is mentioned there, including the fact that Ayodhya used to be actually, the homes of Ayodhya used to be gold-plated. We've always heard that it was, Lanka was Sone ki Lanka, or that Lanka had golden houses. But you'd be surprised to know, I think that the person who, propagated that only read the Sundarkand, and had he read the Valmiki Ramayana, the Balkand, he would have known that even in Ayodhya, the homes were gold-plated. They used to gold-plate their homes, and another shocking thing I'm going to tell you, ancient cultures across the world used to have a lot of gold plating. So I traveled to the Incans, the ancient Incan civilization, which is Peru. And therein, they used to have silver plates and gold plates out of their houses. So they used to decorate them with gold and silver. Now, I also went to Egypt. In Egypt, again, the internal rooms and everything, in fact, their coffins, everything was made of gold, and all their, for example, the Tutankhamun's grave that was recovered, that was full of gold. So in ancient cultures, they used to have this concept of gold plating their homes. And can anybody tell me, where did this idea of gold plating come from? Why did they gold plate it? Any guesses? Any guesses? No? So there is a very, very interesting line in the Valmiki Ramayana. So in the Valmiki Ramayana, it says that the houses are like the vimans of the gods. And since the vimans of the gods are gold-plated, therefore we also assume, or we know, that in ancient times, all of them used to gold plate their homes. And all of this is mentioned in my book as well. So one after the another, you're going to unravel deep mysteries of our ancient times, and also get a, get a brief introduction of civilizations who practiced similar things from across the world.
Pleasure. Yes.
Yes. Ayodhya. Yes. So Saket was a name that was given much later. I do not know the from where that name came out, because my expertise is on Ayodhya per se. So I can't really help you on that. But yes, Saket is a name that came later. I did not want to call it Divine Ayodhya because I come from a military background. So my father is in the army, and when I read the description of Ayodhya and the Valmiki Ramayana, and of course I have been to New York, I have lived in Abu Dhabi, I have traveled everywhere. So everything that, all the ancient cultures that I came across, I thought that it was an amazing district or an amazing city. I did not think that there was so much divinity that was mentioned in the description of Ayodhya, as much there was practicality mentioned. Everything that you read about the description of Ayodhya of those times describes practical application of warfare, practical application of, a good construction of a city, practical application of good, design, which enables a city to protect itself when there is an attack. So for example, you would wonder why there would be a moat. What is the importance of a moat? Can somebody tell me what is the importance of a moat around a fort or a stronghold? Anybody? No. So in ancient times, and even today, we have 4 wings of the armies. In ancient times, we used to have 4 wings of the armies, and that is why the army used to be called the Chaturangi Sena. Chaturang, that which has 4 parts. Now, which are these 4 parts? So the first part, or I'm just giving it in random, there's no order per se. The first part is the infantry, the second is the cavalry, the third are the elephants, and then the fourth we have the chariots. These are the 4 basic parts. Now, whenever there is a fort which has a moat, the reason the moats were constructed is so that the 3 parts, the chariots, the elephants, and the horses, the cavalry, is not able to cross the moat and enter into the stronghold. only the infantry could get in. But if it is a very crowded city, which Ayodhya was, there was no way an infantry could fight a war inside the city. So as a girl coming from an army background, I mean, my grandfather was in the army, my father is in the army. These are very basic applications of protecting oneself from attacks and wars, which was put in Ayodhya. In fact, the way the towers were structured were done so that they could fire at others. They could fire missiles at others, the way the towers were constructed. Then Maharaja Dashrath had 2 yojans more of jungles right across the moat as well. Why did he do that? So whenever there is a jungle before a city, the attacking army's movement gets slow, because the elephants, the chariots, they can't cross through the jungle as swiftly. So these were ways of stalling, and these were ways of segregating. So in military strategy, if somebody is attacking you, one of the fastest ways to spoil an attacking army or to make them, worthless, is to separate them. And a moat would do exactly that. So when I was researching all of this, I understood what was being said. And I also, as an artist and a person who has a great interest in architecture, when I read the other details, I thought that this was a very practical city made in ancient times to protect itself. I did not find anything that had divine protection. And if it had divine protection, then where is it today? We lost it, right? So we have the habit of, giving divinity where it doesn't belong. So for a very practical city, if we give it divine interpretation, which we shouldn't. So this is the reason I called it Amazing Ayodhya, because it is amazing. It is, if you read the kind of detail, the kind of military might, and the kind of, thought process they had when they created it, it is absolutely amazing. Now, I'll tell you another amazing thing now that you asked me. So in ancient times, you did not, today we have those tar roads, right? So dust doesn't fly. So they were so smart then, because there must be chariots and horses going, and if you go on a kacha road, which is like, a mud road, the dust is going to fly. Even like if it is a bricked road, dust flies. So in Ayodhya, they used to continuously keep the roads wet and sprinkled with petals, flower petals or flowers, so that there is no dust, and instead there's a beautiful smell. And when you step on rose petals or when you step on flowers, instead of a stink, they always give out a beautiful smell. So these were just some of the amazing things I came across in the design of Ayodhya, in its greatness. And that is why I called it Amazing Ayodhya. So the Hindi version will come out. So I'll call the Hindi version, taking the tip from you, I'll call it Adbhut Ayodhya.
That's very. So thank you very much for being such wonderful audience. It was lovely having a session here. Thank you.
There is one more. Yeah, tell me. We'll take it. There's one last question. Yes. Excellent.
Sir. Excellent, sir. Excellent. So actually, for the time we have been constrained, this is just the trickling, and I think I'm sure there's more to come. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and thank you for the lovely questions.
Thank you, Ms. NEENA, for sharing the journey behind your book and for giving us deep insights on Ayodhya. Now, Mr. Jay Mohan, CEO of Strategic Ventures, will felicitate Ms. NEENA and Mrs. Vijita.